And then I ran across.
Okay, excellent. Are we good on audio level still? Can everybody hear me?
No. Don't want to.
I can see the audience that we have tonight, and I can't wait.
It's a brutal audience.
How did we survive before cell phones?
I don't know.
Maybe we did.
Maybe we planned better.
We just think we were here.
Yeah.
We're not really here.
Okay, now that I've got everybody corralled, this is great. Corey, lock the door. That'll be great, thank you.
Probably. We'll find out.
I want to welcome everybody to our first TellersBridge show of 2024. We made it. So excited after our break over the holidays, so glad everybody made it back. If you are not familiar with TellersBridge,
Thank you.
we are normally a group of personal storytellers. So if you've ever listened to The Moth, or if you've ever listened to other groups that do personal stories, we do that sort of thing all the time, except for tonight. Tonight is a little bit different, something a little bit out of our ordinary. The theme for tonight, and I wrote it down, is myths, myths, and tales. And whoever came up with the title, thank you for giving that to the MC with the lisp. I appreciate it. Myths, myths, and tales. We often get a lot of questions at the start of the show. The most important one that everybody should know is, where are the bathrooms? There's one right back there. Please don't walk across the stage when somebody is speaking. And then they are out and around the side. Who we are. So TellersBridge is a group of storytellers who got together after one conference in Sioux City. They said, you know what we need? We need more storytelling in Iowa. We need some personal stories. That's right. You snap it, brother. Snap it. There you go. And so that's how TellersBridge was formed. We got together and we made it a reality, and that's what brought us here tonight. How does it work? Well, we have a regular roster of storytellers, but let's say you have a story, a myth, maybe some tales to tell. You also can tell the story. Just get with me before the start of the second half, and we'll make sure we get you into the rotation. That's how it works. What do you get if you stand up and you tell a story? Well, if you tell a story and this is your first time, we're not going to send you home empty-handed. Instead, you will get one of these nifty black t-shirts that you see walking around. There you go, look at that. Ooh, yeah. Little turn, Corey, little turn. There's nothing on the back, I just want to see Corey's butt for a minute. So,
I don't blame you.
You'll get an opportunity to get one of those shirts, preferably in your size, to take home with you and show everybody that you also told a story. But I also know that we have some liars in our group. We have a few liars. And so let's say you're not feeling up to telling a story anymore. You can buy one of those shirts back there. I believe they're $22 for the black shirts. And then you'll notice there are some blue and yellow shirts. Those are $28 and $8? $6. $8 goes to the Red Cross on behalf of Ukraine relief. So that's how that works. Yeah, so you get a nice wardrobe and you get to do something good. You get to feel good, and that's what's most important. All right, what else did I want to cover? Merch. Oh, how could I forget? If you want to have a great show, if you want to have a show that you can tell your friends about, that you can bring your friends to the next show because it was so awesome, I want to make sure that we get back into practice with a skill that you are going to need. Now, I know a lot of you spend time with your families, and this may not have happened, but I also know that the Super Bowl is coming up. And I want to get you in the habit of clapping. That's good. Hey, easy. I'm worried about you, because nobody's stretched, right? So let's stretch a little bit, right? Let's start, like a golf club. Let's start with golf club. Oh, see how nice you warm right into it? Let's go to a school concert for your kids' club. Let's say Jamie Ward just walked in the room. Let's see Jamie's buying out beer. If you clap like that for each one of our speakers tonight, you will not have a bad show. One more thing before we get into the stories. Our bartender's name is Izzy. Izzy. So when she comes around and she asks if you want something, you can call her by name. Izzy. It's like busy. Izzy. Yeah, no, Izzy.
Short for Isabella.
Isabella, there you go. Izzy's our wait staff tonight, so if after the end of the show, make sure you take good care of her. In fact, let's practice giving Izzy a hand, like she's doing that.
Oh, thank
That is awesome. Our first storytelling evening is the spiritual mom who kicked off TellersBridge. Please help me welcome Sue Schmidt.
Is this working?
Yes.
You can hear me? Everyone? All right. Hades looked up from the underworld and saw a redhead circling the pond. She was lovely. He noticed her ankle, the dainty little ankle under her dress. He noticed the way her red hair sort of drifted across her collarbone. And he wanted her. But he hesitated. And he hesitated because he wanted more than just her. He wanted her happiness. He wanted her light. Because as you probably know, Hades is the god of the underworld. And in the underworld, with the exception of the torches that light the streets, unless you're in Elysian fields where all the good guys go, you're in the dark most of the time. He wanted her. He watched as she walked around with her friends, and then she was just so close, that he put his arm up to the ground and grabbed her by the wrist and yanked her down to the underworld. This is a young girl, 15 or 16. She's looking around. Where am I? What was that? Let me go. He lets her go. He noticed that she's covered with water. Dress is wet, mud on the ankles, a scratch on her cheek. He reaches out to wipe the blood off her cheek and she slaps his hand. Now Hades is a big guy. And this is one feisty girl. Don't touch me, she says. Relax, calm down, it's all right, you're fine. I don't want to be here. Do that thing with your arm and put me right back where you got me from because I don't want to be here. Do you have any idea who I am? My mother is Demeter, goddess of the earth. My father is Zeus, the king of the heavens. Do you know what's going to happen to you when he finds out that you dragged me down here? He is going to throw a bolt of lightning at you, and you are going to be jerky. He knows you're here. Persephone, he knows you're here. How do you know my name? Where is this place? It's so dark and smelly. And is that you that smells like that? Oh, it's awful, and I want to go home. Where's my phone, by the way? Oh, here it is. I'm calling my mother. I don't have any bars. I don't have any internet. You don't have any internet here? No, there's no internet in the underworld. Is that why I'm the underworld? You mean hell? Well, not exactly. I'm not staying. Look, calm down. I'm going to have the maid take you to your room. You can change your dress and get more comfortable. I'm not staying here. You need to go to your room. She goes with the maid into the room, closes the door, and does not come out. For any reason. No entreaty, no yelling at her door, nothing. She stays in there for 3 weeks. She refuses to bathe, she refuses to eat. When Hades comes to her door to try to force her to come out, she says, I'm not coming out until I smell as bad as you. I have moss growing on my feet, my teeth are falling out, and this is a hellhole, and I want to go home. You need to eat something. I'm not eating. So he decided to take another tack. He decided to, perhaps he could woo her. He sent flowers every hour, on the hour, for a couple of days, and every time she ripped them to shreds and threw them into the hallway. He sent a basket full of jewels. Now this guy's the god of the underworld, so jewels are nothing to him, but he sends her a basket of gems, and she dumps them out her window into the street. He sends a crock of honey, and she dumps it over the maid's head. He sends her ambrosia, and she throws it out the window, and the dish hits Cerberus, the big dog, the dog with 3 heads, the nasty thing that greets you in Hades. She hits him in one of his heads and opens it up, and that was it for Hades, because Cerberus was his dog, after all. Hades is beside himself. He doesn't know what to do, so he decides to go and see Zeus. So he goes to see Zeus, his brother, and he says, look, I'm having a really hard time with this girl. He said, you're having a hard time? Did you look out the window? Did you look out the window? There is nothing but snow, dead trees, nothing but cold, barren, and Demeter is pissed. She is not letting anything grow until Persephone is home. And I want you to know, I've spent 2 weeks on the chaise lounge because she won't let me into my bed. He says, I don't know what else to do. And Zeus says, give me a break. Her mother is up here screaming and crying and complaining every day, sometimes several times a day. You need to let her go home. I can't let her, I don't want to let her go home. Look, you have on your hands a emotional, moody teenager who's homesick and she has an eating disorder. I think you need to send her back to her mother. Why would you want that? Hades thinks about it. He still doesn't, look. Zeus says, look, just bring her a pomegranate. It's her favorite food. Just bring her a pomegranate and get her to eat a little something, and then, you can send her back to her mother. So Hades goes back. He decides to do that. He gets a nice gold plate, puts the pomegranate and the seeds on it, He takes it to the door and says, I need you to come out, please. No. I need you to come out and talk to me for a moment. You can go right back in if you must. No. I'm going to let you go home. The door cracks open. She does look really bad. And she really smells awful. And there was a moment where Hades wonders why he did this. But he said, I have some pomegranates. I just need you to eat a little bit. I need your mother to know that I fed you. Eat a little bit, just a few seeds. And so she does. She eats six seeds. And Zeus sends Hermes down to get Persephone and take her back to Demeter. Now, Hades is heartbroken. He's sad. He spends the next 6 months just being, wishing she'd come back, and then thinking, well, maybe I should clean up the place a bit. So he cleans it up a little bit. He tries to get rid of some of the smell. He tries to put up some sound barriers so you don't hear all the moaning and the crying and the wailing of the people who are stuck down in hell. He does a lot, but he doesn't really think she'll come back until one day the phone rings, and it's Demeter, and she says, how would you like to spend a little time with Persephone? I understand she ate 6 pomegranate seeds, and I think that means that she should spend 6 months with you. Well, love is a hard thing to give up, and so he decides, okay. So Persephone arrives. She's a little brighter this time. She's a little happier to be here. She has her phone, and Hades says to her right away, you will be so much happier here. We have internet and telephone. We have telephone down here. And she's like, oh, TikTok, X, all those things I love. He says, yes, but there is some bad news. She says, what's that? He said, it's MediaCom. Ladies and gentlemen, now you will understand why we suffer through 6 miserable months of weather and why we have lovely weather whenever Demeter is happy and with her child.
Some people say our stories are going to hell. That one literally did. So the hat. What's up with the hat? On your table, there are some little slips of paper with a question on it. And the question, I didn't actually read the question. What's your favorite fairy tale or myth and why? Now that little slip on the paper is to provide an interstitial while we get people mic'd up and give me something to read. You were never going to say who they are. But I encourage you to fill out one of those. It makes the show go so much more smoothly. Just put them in the hat or hand them off to me or to somebody back there in the suit perhaps, and they'll get to us. So. What is your favorite fairy tale or myth and why? William Tell, because we aim to please. Oh. All right, well good. Somebody got that joke. Fantastic. One of our speakers who's not a joke is coming up next. Please help me welcome Corey Merritt.
There once was a seed. Now, this seed was not self-aware. He didn't know up from down. He didn't know hot from cold. He knew absolutely nothing. But he was content to lay there in the dirt. Who knows for how long, because the seed was not self-aware, until a squirrel comes upon him. Now the squirrel is thinking, that's a good-looking seed. And as he picks up the seed, he starts talking to the poor little seed. Oh, I'm going to put you away for the fall, and you're going to be a fantastic meal for me. And as the squirrel talks to the seed starts to understand. 1, he's going to be eaten. 2, by a squirrel. And 3, this is not what he had hoped for. Now, the squirrel's saying, I have a purpose, you have a purpose. Right now, your purpose is going to be my meal. Now, let me share some facts with you. Squirrels have more than 600 places, actually, they only have 600 places where they can hide a seed and remember it. 600. Wow. The squirrel takes the seed and he finds the most beautiful spot that he can find. There are roses here and roses here. He buries that little seed. Now he gets brushed up against, the squirrel brushes up against the thorns. He's like, ow, I'm gonna remember that. You know, pain is a powerful thing to make us remember. Bumps up against the other rose. He's gonna remember this. Now, remember, there are 600 places for a squirrel to plant something and remember. This happens to be number 601. And as he pats the dirt down on the poor little seed, he says, I'll be back for you in wintertime. Poor little seed recognizes that he's in a hole, he's covered with dirt, and again, this isn't the life he planned for himself. The squirrel goes off. And as the seed is laying there, he feels something poking him. And it's one of the roots from the rose. And he feels something poking him from the other side. And it's the other root from the other rose. And they say, you don't belong here. You're not one of us. Go away. And the seed doesn't know up from down. He's in a hole. He's covered in dirt. So what does he do? He burrows down deeper. And he finds his own food and water. And he builds his own root system. It's in this moment that he realizes that he's kind of outgrowing the shell. And he starts standing a little feeler up. And the ground is cold and hard because it's now winter up top. And he can't go anywhere. So he burrows deeper. And the roses are fighting with him, but he keeps going deeper and deeper, and he builds up his own root network that is extensive, so he has food to sustain himself during the winter. Now the ground, it's still frozen. But a thaw starts to happen, and some of that moisture on top trickles down, and our little seed keeps growing. Finally, he sends out one little tendril up, and the roses are there. You're ugly. You don't belong here. And that one little tendril kind of withers a little bit. And then some sunlight gets on him, and he grows a little bit more. And the wind brushes him against one rose, and the thorns hurt him. Ow! The wind pulls him the other direction, and he brushes up against those thorns. Ow! This wasn't the life the little seed had planned for himself. But he starts to understand that he has a purpose, and he keeps reaching for the sky. Now, the wonderful thing about this is the more that the wind pushes him against the thorns, the stronger he gets. Till one day his stalk was so strong that he didn't feel the thorns from either of the roses. But the heads of the roses, where the buds were, still talked to him. You're ugly, you don't belong to us. You don't belong with us, you're ugly. Oh my gosh, you're gonna ruin our property values. This wasn't the life that the seed had planned for himself. So he kept reaching for the sky. Till finally one day he was taller than both of the roses on either side of him. And he tracked the sun across the sky. And his head was big. And the roses were like, my gosh, you have a big head. But he was okay. Because he understood something. That even though he stood out, he was going to find his way. Now, you remember that squirrel from the beginning of the story? The one that planted him there and forgot him? All of a sudden, the squirrel's like, where did my meal go? And he sees his plant. And the squirrel says, hey, you figured out your purpose. You're a sunflower, and you're beautiful. Now, some people would tell you that he was trying to charm the sunflower to get some of those seeds. I'm not going to tell you that. But what I will tell you is this. As the squirrel sat there, the sunflower remembered his little friend. And he shook out some of his seeds. And just before he let them go, he said this to all those seeds. Remember, there's enough sunlight for everyone.
Now that Corey, hold on, sometimes I forget. I don't need to worry about turning you guys off. I already turned myself off. You're next.
Okay.
What is your favorite fairy tale or myth and why? I don't really want to read this, but I will. Cinderella, because I have a foot fetish. There's a P.S. For the same reason, I am not a fan of The Little Mermaid. Wow. All right. Our next storyteller is Ben Traxel. Please help me welcome.
This is the Gary Whiteville Memorial teleprompter. Is this mic on?
Yes.
Oh, shall I turn it off? This is about the time 2 pine needles saved my life. I landed in the ditch, and it happened so fast. My 8-year-old self didn't hardly know what hit it. Grandpa had his hand over my mouth and was motioning for me to be very quiet. I remember seeing several large, dark shapes in the path in the forest, in the distance. And then all of a sudden, with a thud, I hit the bank in the ditch. Just bang, this grandpa pushed me really quickly off the path. What were those things? I whispered. Grandpa just crouched low and motioned for me to be quiet. I held my breath. I was so scared. How did I get in this mess? I just wanted to go mushroom hunting with my grandpa and listen to his stories about the old days. They sounded so exciting. And he agreed to take me mushroom hunting, even though he said it was a little bit early and it might be dangerous. And that sounded like so much fun to me at the time. Back in the beginning, to explain how I got in here, spending time with Grandpa was always very educational. He told us stories about the old days. He, for instance, would say, number 13.
your surroundings. I remember the time 2 pine needles saved my life. 2 little bitty pine needles because I saw them on a path. I hid off the path. Oh, Grandpa, I've heard this before. So this is important. You got to pay attention because you got to pay attention to your surroundings. 2 pine needles were on the path. I slipped off the path and hid very carefully. There were no pine trees anywhere. That's why they were important, and that's why I noticed them. Pretty soon, a big bear came walking along the path, hungry. There was a mother bear looking for food for her cubs. I would have been that food. I stayed hid till the bear was gone. You want to make sure that if you're hungry and you want something to eat, you see it before it sees you, or you might get eaten. And that would be bad. Ah, Grandpa, I've heard that a lot. Pay attention to your surroundings. It's important. Then he said you might just get eaten. We knew that would be bad. We could not always tell when he was exaggerating because he could do so many things. When we were learning to shoot our BB guns, for example, he taught us how to line the sight up and the notch just right and shoot and hit exactly what we're shooting at with the BB gun or rifle. And then he said, after you get that mastered, you want to learn to be able to hit whatever you're looking at. You're straight ahead. And we said, Grandpa, you can't really do that. Yes, I can. Give me the gun. He took the gun and he hit across the barn yard, through the barn, through the big open window, clear to the other side, and the top rafter. He shot 3 sparrows right off the top rafter. Bang, bang, bang. From the hip like that. See, you just a little practice, you'll get it too. Wow, we couldn't believe it. So he kind of had our attention after that. When you practice shooting where you look, you can actually get pretty good at it. We hadn't believed him until then. So here I am in the ditch. I'm trying to get up, still playing it up. And then there's this darn 601 sign with a dead squirrel lying on it. Oh, Corey, sorry, wrong story. Grandpa stuck his head up on the path, and all I could see were these giant poles still moving away. They were over 7 feet tall. They appeared very, very hairy. Then I realized that they were completely covered, not with hair, but with pine needles. Pine needles were dropping off of them like crazy as they walked along. One of them was carrying a lamb, one of them was carrying a baby pig under its arm, and another looked what to be a small child over its left shoulder. The child looked to me like one of the neighborhood kids. I thought I recognized the coat. The heavy padding of the large feet receded slowly into the distance. Grandpa stood up. Do you know what those words said? Those were giant killer mushrooms. Now you get to learn how to find the new little mushrooms that we get to eat. What do you mean, Grandpa? After seeing those things, I'm not sure I want to go mushroom hunting ever again. Notice the little pine needles that have been dropping off the large mushrooms as they're not on the path anymore. I looked, and there behind on the path, being gathered up by little bitty cute mushrooms, all the pine needles were being gathered up until they couldn't hold anymore. They didn't have much room to hold them, but they held as much as they could, and then the little guys would wander off the path and find a nice comfortable place in the sun and throw them down next to a stump or a piece of wood and settle into the middle and go to sleep. And that's where we find them. And that's why we don't see a lot of pine needles on the path.
But we did see that just single pair before he pushed me off the path. You tried to kill me, Grandpa.
No, I didn't try to kill you, I tried to save you. Those little mushrooms missed just a few occasionally. The grown-up mushrooms keep an eye out and spawn more little mushrooms whenever they notice that the little ones aren't keeping them all picked up. These mushrooms are smart. They don't want to let anyone know that they're on the prowl.
How did they catch that lamb and that little pig, Grandpa?
The mushrooms hide in big piles of leaves and pine needles, and they wait for prey to come over the top. And there's a big pine grove up by the Porter's barn, and I think that's probably how they got little Billy Porter too. You noticed the little child?
Yes, I did, Grandpa. I thought it was one of the neighborhoods.
Yeah. It's Billy Porter's youngest child. This path leads right to their barnyard, and he probably wandered too close. Boy, I reckon so. Don't say anything to your parents about that. They might not let us go mushroom hunting anymore.
Not a word, Grandpa.
Good, it'll be our little secret. Come on, we're lucky to have this hunting so soon after the giant killer mushrooms have passed through. Look around this clearing where the tree fell. Notice how the little piles of pine needles are scattered about? Now reach down into the center one.
Grandpa, I found a nice little mushroom.
Yep. And that little guy you just picked had gathered those pine needles to lay down in.
Oh, I get it.
Yep. The forest is littered with these little piles of pine, soft pine needles with a baby mushroom in the middle of each one. Well, Grandpa, here's the spot where you saw those two pine needles originally. They're gone now. The little guys must have picked them up this time. What would have happened if you had not seen those pine needles? We walked past the spot. They were gone. Grandpa, what would have happened? When something's going to eat you, it's a good idea to see them before they see you. Those two pine needles saved our lives.
All right, thank you. I need my slips, but here, I'm gonna pick one for you. You're gonna pick one for me.
I don't know what it is.
It's too black. Too small.
All right, we're back. Oh, gee, I wonder who wrote this one, Ben. What is your favorite fairy tale or myth and why? Hung Chad, because he's a hell of a man. Oh. If you don't get the joke, my first name is Chad. Mark is my middle name, but all right. All right. I'm going to read another one. While we get our next speaker ready, what is your favorite fairy tale or myth and why? Fractured Fairy Tales version of anything. Love the narration by Edward Everett Horton in his golden years. All right, excellent, yeah, excellent. I did not know who did the voices, right? Edward Everett Horton. Excellent. Well, Horton may have heard of Who, but we're about to hear from a Mr. Who's Who of storytelling. Please help me welcome Jamie Ward.
Brought this just in case the Mediacom internet is its normal reliable self. Mom says you always say hi to family. This story was told to me by my great grandmother. It happened one evening. Grandma's sitting in her chair, a lap blanket, cat's on her lap. Fireplace is crackling, and she's pulling yarn in through her knitting needles nice and slow. I'm sitting in a big overstuffed chair, light behind me, reading the book. It's warm, it's comfortable, it's a wonderful evening. And I noticed a silence in the room. The fire was crackling, the cat was purring, the knitting needles had stopped clicking, and I realized that Grandma had fallen gently asleep in her chair. I thought, well, I'll finish reading this chapter and then I'll hustle her off to bed. Well, I read the chapter 2 and maybe 4, and there was a voice in the room, a voice I did not recognize, and it said, "Son, you must listen to this story." And I looking around the room, and it came from where Grandma was at, but it wasn't her voice. And I said, "Grandma?" And the voice said, "I am your great, 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 many great grandmother. But you must listen to this story." And neither her lips or tongue were moving, but the voice came out of her. And it says, "When I was young, I had a favorite pet, Canda. Canda was a goose with a long black neck, and I loved her dearly, and she followed me everywhere. I even knitted her a tiny little scarf, and I tied it around her long black neck. And one day, Canda was gone. She was missing. And I looked everywhere. Every place I looked, I could not find her. And I'm in tears, and I see this dusty stranger coming down the road, and I says, "Sir, I've lost my pet, Canda. You must help me find him." And this dusty stranger had a raven on his shoulder, is wearing a travel cloak with the hood pulled up and the sleeves so long you could not see his hands. And as he walked, dust around his feet, the cloak almost touched the ground. It looked like he was floating along in a little cloud of dust. And I said, "It's obvious, says, you must help me find Canda, my pet goose." And the stranger says, "Listen to your own breath." And I'm sobbing. He says, "You don't understand, I cannot find Canda. Canda is nowhere to be found. You have to help me." And the stranger says, "Listen to your own breath." And I'm sobbing. I take a deep breath and let it out. And faintly in the distance, I hear a familiar sound. And across the flax field and along the edge of the pond and up the stream, and there is Canda down in the water. And a little tree branch has caught her scarf. Then she cannot escape. And the dusty stranger came and freed Canda and took off the scarf. And miracle of miracles, there is now a white ring around Canda's neck where the scarf used to be. And I thanked the stranger, and I gathered up Canda and went home to tell my parents. It didn't take long before the dusty stranger had wandered into the village. And there were two brothers, merchants, and they were yelling at each other. They were arguing. And as the dusty stranger went by, one of them hooked him and said, "Help me, my idiot brother. He cannot understand simple words." And the other one said, "Oh, it's not me, it's him. He cannot understand. He can't see what's right before his face." And the dusty stranger said, "Listen to what's in your ears." And the brothers said, "What do you mean, what's in my ears is the cattle watering of this idiot over here." And the other one says, "All I hear is stupid ideas coming from him." And this dusty stranger said, "Listen to what's in your ears." And they both looked at each other and they took a deep breath, and in a moment of calm, they listened to what the other was saying and realized that both of them were trying to do the best to help their business. And they turned to the dusty stranger and said, "Thank you. You're a very wise man. You must be a seer, a sayer, perhaps a wizard. For only one as wise as you could help us the way you have. We have argued all of our life, but now we hear each other." And this conversation was overheard by a counselor to the king. And the counselor said, the king's guards, hurry the dusty stranger off to the court, because if the dusty stranger could give counsel to the king, then the counselor would win favor with the king, and that would be good for him. So the dusty stranger with the raven on his shoulder and the hood pulled up was now before the king. And the king says, what shall I do? There's a very strong kingdom to the west with a very strong army. I would rather expand the wheat fields so that we have more food. But maybe I should expand the wall so that we have protection. Or shall I try and seek peace with them? And the dusty stranger said, listen to your own heart. And the king said, my own heart? I don't need my own heart. I don't need something in my heart. I need it in my ears. Give me advice. I hear you're a seer, a sayer, a wizard. You're supposed to give me advice. Maybe you're a spy. Maybe a night in a dungeon would do you some good and it would loosen your tongue. And off to the dungeon he was sent. The next day he was brought back before the king and he says, so what shall it be? Peace or war? Shall the legacy of my kingdom be that we went on forever, or were we overcome by this other army? And the dusty man with the raven on his shoulder and his hood pulled so far forward you could not see but 2 eyes, no face, just 2 eyes out of this deep cloth cave. And he said, listen to what's in your heart. King took a breath and his shoulders dropped and he says, I do not want war. I really want peace. I shall send my embassies out west and we will make peace and we will trade and both of us will prosper. I admire you for your advice and I apologize for having thought you to be a spy. You truly are a sooth, a seer, a sayer. You are a wizard. And for a reward, I'm going to give you the finest cloak in all the land, so that as you travel, everyone around you will see that you have the ear of the king. Guards, take off that cloak. And as the guards approached, the raven flew off his shoulder and flew around the room. And the guards pulled off the cloak, and the king said, bring me my finest cloak. And there was dust that came up from the cloak, dust from a lifetime of travel. And as the dust filled the room, and the guards stepped away, and the dust settled, no one was there. And a voice from above said, listen to what's in your eyes. And I said, Grandma, or should I say, many great-grandma, this story can't be true. And Grandma, fast asleep, her hand raised up and pointed to the bookshelf over my head. And I went there, and there was a dusty tome up there, and I pulled it down, and I flipped through it, and in the very back, there was a little scarf, white scarf, neatly, that would fit right around the goose's neck. And I said, oh, certainly, Grandma. This cannot be a true story. And she said, listen to the geese. When you see them flying overhead, you will see the white scarf around their neck, the scarf of friendship that can never again be caught on a tree branch. And as they pass overhead, they will call out, thanks, thanks, thanks to the dusty stranger who helped them so many years ago.
All right, hey, we're back. Excellent. You guys have a great time? Yeah. Yeah. I am looking around this room and I can see that you guys need to recharge, right? You need some extra libations. We're going to give you an intermission so you can do that recharge or use the restroom or whatever you need to do. Before I let you go, a couple of reminders. If you have any stories that you would like to tell, please get with me before the end of this intermission. Slips. Those little slips on the table. What's your favorite myth and why? Get those to me. Get those to Sue. Get them to someone. Slip them to us if you will. And then also, you've seen both the black shirts, you've seen the Ukraine shirts. You're probably thinking, I want to get one of those shirts. To get one of those shirts, either tell a story or get with Sue Schmidt, who's standing up. Sue, please stand up. Please get with Sue Schmidt, and she can alleviate you of your money in exchange for some magic beans and maybe a shirt. We will be back in about 10 minutes, 8:01, and we'll see you back here. I will see you back.
I'm doing fine. How about you?
Good. You hanging in there? You want to stay for the second half? Or you? Okay.
I'm sorry, what? Oh, good.
I used to know two Mike Andersons, but he's not either. Mike Anderson.
Fairy tale or myth and why? Jack and the Beanstalk, because fairy tales are a growing concern. All right. If Sherry doesn't laugh. What is your favorite fairy tale or myth and why? Many Moons by James Thurber. And why? Always ask how to attain someone's desire. Deep. Well, one thing I've been desiring is some more storytellers. Please help me welcome Randy with our next story.
So this is sort of a real-life fractured fairy tale for the person who mentioned fractured fairy tales in their little slip earlier. And the title of this is Non-Holidays That I Loathe, or the Myth of Romance. There are 2 dates of every calendar year that I pretend to be a Jehovah's Witness and refuse to acknowledge the holidays. Those dates are February 14th and December 31st, because these are the 2 days of every year that the universe pronounces to single people, you are alone. You have nobody. You are a loser. With February 14th in recent years being dubbed SAD, or Singles Awareness Day. Even professionally, I have a sketchy history with Valentine's Day. I used to own and run a flower shop. And yes, I know Valentine's Day is one of those bad Hallmark chocolate and florist holidays. But of the florist holidays, it was always the hardest one to anticipate and plan for. There were variables that other holidays just didn't have. What day of the week does it fall on? Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday? That's great. Monday or Tuesday? Meh. Saturday or Sunday? Forget it. The men sending flowers, and it is still primarily men who send the flowers, want the biggest bang for their bucks so they can, well, get the biggest bang for their bucks. They want to send the flowers to their Valentine's place of employment so the co-workers will get jealous and ooh and ah and then know what a great catch she is. Sending them to the home on a weekend just loses the cachet that would bring. Of course, then in the Midwest, weather is a factor. Mid-February is prime snowstorm season. A snowstorm a few days before or on the day wreaks havoc on deliveries, not only from the wholesalers, but then the finished product on the day of. Roses, the Valentine's flower. The wholesale price is so inflated that many florists don't use the standard markup, thus affecting their margin. Valentine's Day was always a crapshoot from the business standpoint. And personally, I have no overwhelmingly wonderful stories of Valentine's Days past. Only one really bad one involving one ex, the stalker Scott. That's his real name because I'm not protecting that bastard's anonymity. That was when I spent Valentine's Day night on the phone with the police and the phone company, trying to get a police track put on my phone. But that is ancient history and a story for another time. You know, I really like being partnered. I like being able to climb into bed with a man at night, sex aside, and waking up next to him in the morning. I miss the non-sex act intimacy of being partnered when I'm single. I do okay when I'm single. I've had enough experience to be used to it. That's not a lament, just a statement of fact. It's not as though Cupid has shot many arrows in my favor. I met Jaime in the summer of 2009 at Hollywood Beach in Chicago. He was my kryptonite trifecta. Latino or brown-skinned, a very hairy body, and the third part, well, in polite company. I'll just say when he was born, his parents did not leave a tip for the obstetrician. Good, you got it. I didn't think he'd be interested in me. I was so far out of his league. One, he was younger than me. How much younger I wouldn't discover for a few days. It was disconcerting to realize he was born the year I graduated high school. I was chronologically, biologically old enough to be his father. He was born after the original Star Wars movie came out. That realization was a real mindfuck for me. But somehow dates were comfortable. He began spending more time at my place, and not long after we started dating, I'd lost my job. So it was good for me to have someone to cook for and to occupy my newly found time. The holiday season encroaches. For the first time in a long time, I'm actually coupled for the upcoming New Year's Eve. People can call me many a thing, but hypocritical is not among the adjectives that one can use against me. I was not ready to don the party hats and make an all-out unabashed New Year's Eve festival because I'm finally partnered. In keeping with my curmudgeonly cynicism, I've long considered New Year's Eve to be amateur night. I don't want to be out at a bar or at some party, then having to contend with the drunks on the way home after midnight. Additionally, the end of the year for too many previous years had ended with me having the contemplative reflection, Jesus fucking Christ, is it possible this past year sucked worse than the year before? Which then became the follow-up, is it conceivable this next year will suck even worse? Some call me pessimistic. When I possess empirical data to back up these claims, I call it reality. But I digress. For New Year's Eve, we opted for a quiet night at my place. He'd make a traditional Mexican dinner while I would set up a romantic evening at home. In the living room, I move away the coffee table from between the sofa and fireplace. I lay the leaky air mattress out on the floor, topped with a sleeping bag, lots of quilts and blankets and pillows, for it was going to be a truly romantic, sex-filled night in front of the fire. We'd fall asleep and wake up on New Year's Day morning in post-coital bliss. How rom-com we would be. Just how rom-com was about to unfold. Jaime is in the kitchen cooking. I've got the firewood gathered. It's the first time I've had a fire in the fireplace this winter, possibly 2 winters. I open up the flue, get the fireplace poker, and start jostling ashes and charred remnants from fires past. Jostling and poking, poking and jostling on the grate, when all of a sudden, something drops from the chimney above. Jesus fucking Christ, there's a dead squirrel! Heretofore, I'd not witnessed Jaime moving so quickly as he did, running down the hallway into the living room to investigate, along with me, the flattened like a pancake, petrified corpse of one long deceased squirrel. Now, when I say flattened, I'm not speaking hyperbole. These dehydrated skeletal remains look as though this squirrel previously had a date with a Zamboni prior to landing on my farm. The squirrel had not been of this world for a long, long time. There was no fetid carrion smell of rotting flesh. It was flattened bones, cartilage, and fur. How are you going to get it out? Get it out? Are you fucking insane? I'm not touching that thing with a 10-foot fireplace poke. This just became the squirrel crematorium. And ever so gingerly, I began to shove crumpled up newspaper, small twigs, and kindling below the fireplace grate, where the flattened remains of one long-deceased squirrel lay in state. With some logs on top, I light the funeral pyre and close the glass doors tightly so all signs of previously animated fauna will be eradicated from my fireplace and apartment, hopefully before dinner is over. Still, flattened squirrel carcass pretty much is a buzzkill for any romantic evening. God, I fucking loathe New Year's Eve. Jehovah's Witnesses, you've won me back. Let's go knock on some doors. Perhaps a hirsute, intact, single gay Latino man will answer.
Our next presenter will be Mike Anderson. So Gary, we're gonna need your stuff. Just the mic. What is your, did anybody notice that squirrels are making like a little appearance in this show?
It's a
what was the
squirrel
one that we
monkey.
did was about like spiders or something? It wasn't even about spiders, and like spiders were everything.
It wasn't a raven, it was a squirrel on his shoulder.
It was wow.
It was a flying squirrel.
Flying squirrel.
What is your favorite fairy tale myth and why? Prometheus. I like the idea that someone took on an eternity of pain for the greater good of mankind. What is your favorite fairy tale or myth and why? My favorite fairy tale is The Fox and the Hound. It's the sweetest story. It's the sweetest story. They're anonymous, but they don't have to be. Please help me welcome our next speaker, Mike Anderson.
Once upon a time, there was a man who owned a mill. Now, don't get too attached to this man, because he's not in this story very... He's gone. Well, it was now time for the mill owner's 3 sons to divide up their dad's stuff. And apparently running a mill back in the days of once upon a time wasn't a very profitable enterprise because he didn't have much. There was the mill itself. There was a dusty old donkey that would help turn the mill. And there was a mangy old cat that helped keep the mice and rats under control. The oldest son got to pick first. He was thrilled to get the mill itself, for it guaranteed an income for the rest of his life. The second oldest son wasn't particularly happy but he decided that dusty old donkey would be the most useful. Besides, he was a Democrat.
Wow.
That meant the youngest son, he doesn't really have a name, but we're going to call him Jamie. Jamie was stuck with that old cat. Now, to borrow the translated words of Frenchman Charles Perrault, who's largely credited with writing this story, the poor young fellow was quite comfortless at having received so little. Well, then Jamie was startled when the cat sat down before him, looked up and said very seriously, which is a good thing, but it's hard to take a talking cat seriously. He said very seriously, "Don't be concerned, my good master. If you will but give me a bag and have a pair of boots made for me so that I may scamper through the dirt and the bushes, then you shall see you are not as poor off as you imagine." Well, first Jamie thought he'd make a few bucks by taking this talking cat and picking up the phone and calling Ripley's Believe It or Not. But he realized two things. One, phones hadn't been invented and Ripley hadn't been born yet. So this is what he thought next. He thought about how he had seen that cat outsmart those rats and mice around the mill, and he decided maybe this cat knows what he's talking about. So Jamie got the cat what it had asked for, a bag, which the old cat slung around his neck, and a set of boots, which he very deliberately pulled on with great dignity. And although the original story didn't say this, I'm also going to give him a debonair green felt hat with a little red feather, and a shiny rapier sword. Just because it's fun to do this. All right, everybody try it. Don't be careful, don't poke your neighbor. Come on. See? That mangy old cat was Puss in Boots. Now the now dashing cat went into the woods. He put some greens in a bag. And when a hungry rabbit wandered in, Puss quickly closed the bag and... I know, I'm sparky about the violence. These fairy tales can get disturbing. At least I'm not telling you the story about the time that after the stroke of midnight, Cinderella came across Peter the... That was horrible. Now, an ordinary talking cat wearing dust white boots and a nifty green felt hat with a little red feather and a shiny sword that goes might have just taken this prize to his master for dinner. Certainly Jamie would have appreciated the tender delicacy, but Puss was a big thinker. He had other plans. He took the bag, holding the expired hare, and walked all the way to the castle where the neighborhood king lived. And when the king answered the knock on the drawbridge, Puss told him, "Sir, I have brought you a plump rabbit from my noble lord, the Marquis de Carabas." Now, Puss just made up that title. While Jamie is a fine name, Puss was aware of the importance of effective branding. The king said, "Tell your master, thank you very much." That had worked so well that Puss tried it again. This time he hid in a grain field, and he held the bag open, and a whole family of birds flew in. Yes, he captured the whole partridge family, including the whiny little red-haired one. Puss again presented the prizes to the king, and again the king was delighted. This continued for several months. As Puss brought more and more of these tender riddles to the king, he always gave the credit to the Marquis de Carabas. One day, Puss heard the king plan to take his daughter, who just happened to be the most beautiful princess in the world, out for a ride down the road that ran beside the windy river that flowed through his kingdom and into the lands of his neighbors. Now, Puss told his master, Jamie, all you need to do is go to a spot I'll show you and bathe naked in the river. I'll take care of the rest. Well, Jamie did what he was told, for a change. With perfect timing, the king's carriage, it was a nifty pink 1655 Cadillac, passed by, carrying the king and his daughter, the princess, with cat-like quickness, and then some. Puss jumped out of the bushes in front of the king's carriage and cried out, "Help! Help! The great Marquis de Carabas is drowning!" And the king stuck his head out the window of the carriage and saw it was the same cat who had brought him so many enjoyable meals. He immediately ordered his guards to rescue the Marquis de Carabas from the river. And while they were doing so, Puss ambled up to the king and told him that thieves had come by and stolen the Marquis's fine clothing. Well, the king immediately commanded his royal wardrobe officers to run and fetch one of his best suits for Jamie, naturally complete with blue suede shoes. Well, Jamie, the pseudo-marquis, looked so hot in the fine duds the king had given him that the king's daughter was instantly smitten, and the king invited Jamie to join he and the princess for the ride. Puss, however, did not ride along. He had other plans. Our anthropomorphic feline scampered ahead of the carriage and soon came across a few modest countrymen mowing a meadow. With his usual swagger, Puss went up to them and he said, "My good fellows, if you do not tell the king that the meadow you are mowing belongs to my lord Marquis de Carabas, you shall be chopped up like mincemeat." Well, sure enough, when the carriage passed by the meadow shortly after, the king asked who those in the meadow asked whose meadow they were mowing, and all the mowers said in unison, "It belongs to our lord, the Marquis de Carabas." Well, the king again praised James the Marquis. Puss continued to run ahead, threatening everyone with the future in mincemeat if they didn't brag about the Marquis. At last, Puss came upon a giant castle, the largest castle of them all. And the lord of this one was an ogre. Its name was Ben. All the rich land they had been passing through was, in fact, owned by this beast, Ben. But Puss was not intimidated. After some impressive caterwauling, the front door of the castle was thrown open, and Ben the ogre glared down. And Puss purred to Ben, "Sir, I have heard that you are able to change yourself into any kind of creature you have a mind to. A lion, an elephant, whatever you like. And I find that very hard to believe." Ben the ogre said with an attitude, because all ogres have attitudes, it's a genetic thing. Ben said, "That is true, and to convince you, I shall now become a lion." And suddenly, a magnificent golden lion stood before Puss. And Puss was startled, and he leapt upward onto the castle roof. The ogre then resumed his normal form, and the cat scrambled down, not an easy thing to do in special rooms. And he agreed that he had been very frightened indeed, but not too frightened, for he then told the ogre, "I've been told you can also transform yourself into the smallest of animals. I have to admit, I believe that to be quite impossible." "Impossible," Ben roared. "You shall see." And the ogre immediately turned himself into a mouse. And then Puss did what Puss does best. He ate a mouse. Sorry. About this time, the carriage carrying the king, Jamie, and the princess came upon the ogre's castle, and it came up to the ogre's driveway, and Puss ran out and stood boldly in front of the carriage. And he said to his friend, the king, "Your Majesty, welcome to the castle of the Marquis de Carabas." The king was astounded. He turned to Jamie sitting beside him and said, "This castle belongs to you? This is the finest castle in all of Graceland." They all walked into the great hall where a magnificent feast was waiting for them. The ogre had been expecting company. As they ate, at which they each consumed 5 or 6 glasses of wine and more than a few peanut butter and banana sandwiches, the king stood and said, "It would be your own fault, my lord Marquis, if you do not become my son-in-law." Jamie the Marquis accepted the honor, and that very day married the princess, and they lived happily ever after. So what happened to Puss? Well, he became a great lord himself, and he never again chased mice, except for entertainment purposes. He was, after all, Puss in Boots.
All right. Lots of stories that hopefully mystified you with myth, mist, and tales. I remember the theme. For the final story, it's my privilege as the MC to decide whether there will be a final story, and it gets to be me tonight. That's because we didn't have enough stories to keep going. So.
Well, if the shoe fits.
If the shoe fits. In the beginning, the globe did not look like it does today. It was one large landmass called Pangea. And it was quiet and harmonious, and God would walk across this landmass and enjoy his quiet solitude. Then one day, God decided, I know what I'll do. I'll make some children. That was God's first mistake. He created 7 children, and he named them North America, Africa, the twins, Asia, Africa, the twins, North and South America, Europe, Australia, and Antarctica. And if anybody's a parent here, you know whenever you get children together, the first thing you do is fight. God's children were no different. They would complain all day, oh, that mountain's not tall enough. Oh, this forest is so small. Oh, the weather's too good to go outside. Oh, the weather's too bad to go outside. Just complain, complain, complain. And one day, the children cornered God with their complaints. God was in a good humor that day, and he decided to humor the children. The first one to speak was Asia. Father, as the largest of your children, I think I deserve to get my own room. I should have my own room. Other kids are getting into my stuff. I don't like this. God thought about it for a moment, and he said, you know what, Asia? You're right. You're right. And so he split Asia off. Asia said, Dad, that's good. Thank you, Dad. What about India? God said, well, you know, India is a continent from my first marriage, and it's kind of complicated. Technically, it's your subcontinent, so he has to go with you. Asia went with it, or India went with Asia. And it was good, but not good enough. Pretty soon, Africa chimed in. Father, can I get my own room too? God thought about it for a moment. That seems reasonable. He sliced off Africa. Africa got his own room. North America chimed in. Well, Dad, that ain't fair. That's just not fair. I think I should get my own room too. God said, fine, fine. Y'all get your own rooms. Split them all into 7 different rooms. And it was good. It was fairly. It was fairly good. God said, hey, okay, is everyone happy now? Africa said, well, no, Father, I have these grassy plains. I have too many grassy plains. And North America chimed in and was like, hey, Dad, can I have his grassy plains? Asia said, Father, I would like his grassy plains too. God's like, fine, fine. Africa, I'm giving you grassy plains to North America and Asia. Everybody will be happy then. God made it so. And it was good adjacent. In Africa, God said, but Father, what do I get in return? You know, Asia and North America, they do not deserve it. They do not deserve all the grassy plains. What do I get? What are my just desserts? God said, fine. That's what you get. Just dessert. And he made it so. It was less good, but being God has its perks, so we're not going to let that pass. And Africa started to cry. He's like, Father, you always loved North America and Asia best. God's heart softened and he said, look, okay, okay. What do you want? Well, Father, may I have a river? God said, yeah, I can do that for you. I'll give you the longest river in all my lands. We call it the Nile. Is that better? Yeah, that is good. God made it so. And it was okay. Well, South America and Asia chimed in. Well, we want rivers too. All right, South America, look. I'm going to give you a river. We're going to call it the Amazon. And someday, somebody will name a multinational corporation after your river. Are you happy? See. In Asia, we're going to give you a long river too. Let's call it the Yahtzee River. And Asia said, Yahtzee River, no one would ever name anything after that. Guys, like, how about Yangtze? Yeah, it's better. It's now all the kids want rivers, right? You get a couple of them get rivers, now we all want rivers. North America, fine, you get a river. We'll name it something that'll take kids a crazy amount of time to learn, like Mississippi or something stupid like that. And then Australia got the Murray River, and Europe got a river. I mean, it seemed perfectly sane at the time. God made all that so. It wasn't his best work, but it was decent. Now, what you may not know is that Europe had a tiny little crush on her bigger brother, Asia. She says, Father, can I be close to Asia? Because what if people pick on me? God said, yeah, that's a good idea. Tell you what, I'll smush you two together. Then you'll be perfectly safe. Europe said, oh, merci, Papa. Asia just looked really angry because he was the one who asked for his own room in the first place. a spoiler alert, this played out for years to come. And in fact, at one point, Asia just put a curtain between Europe and Asia. North America chimed in. Well, Dad, come on, me and South America, we're twins, right? We should be smushed together too. That'd be good. Guy's like, I'm not smushing anybody else together. I'm going to connect you by this little strip of land. Merry Christmas to you, you know? Is this good enough? Are we good enough now? Is everybody good? Africa is still not happy. Dad, all I have is this dessert. I'm sad, you know. What? Okay, Africa, what do you need? How about a forest? Fine. You get a forest, it will make it such a big forest, they'll call it a jungle. It'll be a jungle. South America said, can I have a jungle too? Fine, you get a jungle too. You'll get the biggest of them all. And God is at his wit's end. And he looked at each of his children and he's like, now, is there anything else? And all the kids looked at everywhere but God. And they said, no, Father. And so God went to bed because he had a busy day the next day, populating the earth, planting fake dinosaur bones for people to find. You know, now you may have wondered what happened in Antarctica. Well, Antarctica was outside playing and missed out on negotiations. You could say that Antarctica was left out in the cold. So that is how the continents became what they are today. And that's why God doesn't attend any of our family gatherings Thank you for humoring me with my little story. Wow, we've had quite an evening. We've had squirrels, we've had short, mediums, at large, we've had we've had love, and Jehovah's Witnesses. God appeared at least twice in this session. It's been a story. We've had animals. We've had magic mushrooms. I don't know if the mushrooms are magic, but they're not bad. You never know. We've had a great evening. And I want to recognize everybody that made this evening great. Please help me welcome back up on the stage Ben and Mike and Jane and Gary and Lori and Sue and Randy. Thank you.
Gary, I need to see you. Okay. I'll do one more. Okay.
All right. All right, we're going to shoot you back to your seats. If you had a great time tonight, tell your friends. If you had not as great time tonight, tell your enemies. Bring them to the next show. If you want to know anything about TellersBridge, or like when we're going to be, apparently I need to look at the website. Look at our home on the web, TellersBridge.com. Look at our social medias. We're on Facebook. And I am looking forward to seeing all of you at the next show. Give yourself a big round of applause.